Hey everybody, this is Dirk here, and we are doing a brand new series during this midweek time called How to Read the Bible, Field Guide for Spotting Jesus in every single book of the Bible. And so I'm glad that you're joining us. I'm glad that you're with us as we take a look at the Bible in every book in the Bible. So it's going to be a little bit of a series. We're going to be grouping a lot of the books of the Bible together for clarity and for ease. Some of them are a little shorter, and so we'll kind of do all those together here. But I guess this is like a little bit of where the series was really born out of. It's a conversation that I have had with a number of different people. And so I'm glad that you're joining us and kind of getting in on some of this. I'd love for you to leave your comments section in the box below. And I know some of you are in small groups and you're going to be using this content for your small group study, which is pretty great. So at any moment, like during the questions, if you want to just go ahead and hit pause, that's okay too, and like discuss it as a group. But this is the deal. This is, I guess, the problem as we think about reading the Bible is that the Bible is a collection of writing over thousands of years by dozens of authors, and that contain hundreds of names and obscure locations, ancient cultures, and confusing theological ideas. I mean, the Bible as a story is really, really confusing. It would be far simpler for the Bible in order to get a point across to just like, I don't know, give us, if the whole thing was structured like the Ten Commandments, only like, this thick or something like that, and saying this is all it is. But instead what God does is he tells a story over thousands of years with hundreds of different characters and people in the story, and he embeds it right into history. I mean, the Bible can be really, really confusing. And so, in fact, I was just having lunch yesterday with a friend, and we were just talking about what God was showing us and some different spiritual practices that we're doing. And he confided in me. He said, hey, listen, like, it's hard, which I totally agree. It's like, I tried to do this, read the Bible in a year deal with my church. And, you get like midway through Exodus or Leviticus or something like that in these books of the Bible. And, sometimes it looks like God is acting harshly with his people. He's doing things, to them or to some other people. And it doesn't really seem like God is being God. And other times it just kind of seems boring, where there's just like lists of names and places and that don't really mean anything to me. And so we just kind of like had a moment of acknowledging like, yeah, reading the Bible sometimes is really hard, especially when you get right into it and all you can see is the trees, or all you can see is the leaves on the trees, and you're missing the entire forest all around you. So what this ongoing series is about every Wednesday at noon is taking a look at how each one of the books of the Bible point and find their place in this much greater picture. And so the problem is that the Bible is so confusing because it's such an assortment of different cultures, of different people, of different languages, even in different places, in different times. If the Bible's confusing because it's so different, we need some unity to it all. The solution here is going to be Jesus. There's this awesome story in the book of Luke, chapter 24. This takes place post-resurrection, where Jesus has just raised from the dead, and he's walking along with a couple of his disciples. Now, it's important to know that they don't know who he is, that they're just walking along as a stranger, and they're obviously emotional, and they're upset because their rabbi, at minimum, Lord and Savior, at maximum, Jesus, had just been crucified, died, and was buried. And so their hearts are aching as they're walking along the road as Jesus, kind of in disguise with maybe like a tunic or a hood over it or something like that. He's just listening to them. And then in Luke chapter 24, we have the story of Jesus on the Emmaus Road right here. Where it says that beginning with Moses and all the prophets, which is a euphemism of saying the entire Bible that they had access to at the time, Genesis all the way through the Old Testament of Malachi, where Jesus, beginning with Moses in Genesis presumably, and all the prophets, he explained to them what was said in all the scriptures, two key words, concerning himself. Now that is huge, church, because as you get into the Bible, really what you're doing then is acknowledging that every verse you read, it isn't just about Moses, or isn't just about the prophet, it isn't just about this city of Jerusalem or the ancient nation of Israel. It isn't just about any of those. It's about Jesus somehow in the telling of the stories, whatever stories they may be, it's actually about Jesus. And I think that brings so much clarity whenever you get to like, man, why is God acting so harshly? Why is God collapsing these walls around Jericho? And then we start to see that through the Jesus lens, we start to see like this is actually a story not about Jericho or about a marching band around this city. This is a story about Jesus. This is about a story about how Jesus will collapse whatever walls we put up around our hearts. This is a story about how Jesus has reduced the fortification of evil in this world, and he once and for all will triumph. It's a story about Jesus. And so what we're going to do is kind of go through the Bible and see how each one of these books is actually, at its very, very core, a story about, you guessed it, Jesus. All right, let's jump in here. The first book that we're going to do is the first book in the Bible, which is Genesis. Right here. Okay, just some questions, and I'd love for you to drop them in the comment below. When you hear Genesis, like what do you think of? What comes to mind when you hear Genesis? It's a word that means beginning in Greek, and maybe that helps, but it's the first book of the Bible. It's a lengthy book of the Bible. It covers a lot of time. What do you know about it? What happened? Who is in Genesis? What are some characters? And I'd love for you to just drop it right in the comment section below, especially if you registered for this opportunity to be together here. This is a cool time just to be together. What happened in Genesis? What are some facts that you can think of? What's something that somebody knows about Genesis? This is a good time in your small groups to go ahead and hit pause and talk a little bit more about what happened in Genesis. Right on. Keep on leaving those in the comment section below, and we will come back to those as time goes by. But a lot of people, when they think of Genesis, the first thing that comes to mind is, well, that's the beginning of like everything. That was the beginning of creation. That was the beginning. That was when God created everything. I think sometimes we look at Genesis as a whole book of the Bible through the lens of just the first chapter in Genesis. In the beginning, God created. Here's a tip, because Genesis is a story in a purely literary kind of way that covers literally the beginning of time, like space and time and the creation of the universe, all the way up through the Egyptian period. And so here's a solid pro tip for you, is that when a book covers a huge amount of time, like the beginning of time through the Egyptian age, pay attention to when time slows down, when the storyteller slows down, because chances are what the author is doing is trying to unfold a particular event and trying to get you to pay attention to it. I think that's really important. Like if I told you a story like, hey, tell me about, I grew up just west of Grand Rapids in a little suburb of Jenison and Hudsonville. And then all of a sudden I would start to tell you a story about what happened to me in junior high. Or what happened to me as a sophomore in high school, and I was out on a camp retreat one time, and somebody asked me if I ever had the opportunity to respond to a faith invitation that God was actually alive in my life. And I just started telling the story about when God was real to me for the very, very first time. That's obviously an important, like, keystone event in my personal history. I kind of rolled the time from junior high out through high school, and I stopped on just one category there. Obviously, that one's really, really important to me. True story. So when we look at Genesis, we're going to pay attention to those times when it slows down. Theme of Genesis, all right? This is if you're just going to kind of come away with what's one line, one theme of the book of Genesis, is that God separates out one through whom all nations, one through whom he would bless all nations. And this key word is separating. Some of the content, by the way, for this series is going to be how to read the Bible through the Jesus lens. This author here, Michael Williams, was actually my Hebrew professor in seminary, and he came out with this book a few years ago, and it's just super, super good in a really a handy way of spotting Jesus in every book of the Bible. And so we're going to say thank you to him, and also maybe try to get him on at some point here, which would be pretty cool. Key passage in Genesis, and if you're a memory work kind of person, this is a great one to commit to memory. This is Genesis 12, 2-3, is that God is speaking now to Abraham, and he's saying, I will make you into a great nation. I will bless you. I will make your name great. And you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, curse those you will curse. All people on earth will be blessed through you. That is so important, this concept of blessing. But throughout Genesis, we start very, very broadly of all of creation, and then we start to see God start to separate out and separate out and separate out. Just a few examples of that. Different ways of separating light from darkness, water on the second day, from the waters heaven above, from the waters in the earth below. Separating out dry ground from the seas, separating out human beings as being unique and different and separate than the animals of creation. And then among the human beings, so you can see it's kind of like telescoping, right? Among the human beings, separating out Seth from Adam and Eve's other children, most notably Cain and Abel. You might have read that story in Genesis 5. Noah from all the other people on the planet at that point. And then Noah's son Shem from his other brothers, Ham and Japheth. Abraham out from all of the other people in the world. We just noticed in that key passage in Genesis 12 there where we see God saying, I'll make you into a great nation. We see God separating out Isaac from Ishmael and Jacob from Esau and Joseph from the rest of his brothers. I mean, we see this separating out happening. It's like God is teasing out a particular people. He's carving out a particular people. Listen, so important for a particular purpose. And that's what we're going to get into today as we see in Genesis, is that God is preserving a human line to save the world. And in Genesis, it happens, by the end of the story, it happens very, very literally, is that Joseph, the son, one of the sons of Jacob, gets sold off, and God uses these incredible events. His brothers betray him. They sell him to some slave traders. He moves up from Israel all the way to Egypt. He's sold into captivity. He's imprisoned. He rises up through the ranks of imprisonment. God gives him this vision that a famine is coming. There's going to be 7 good years and then 7 bad years. He stores up enough grain, enough food over those 7 years that he's able to literally feed the world, save the world by the end of the Genesis story. That's the point. The point is that you're saved, or you're carved out, or you're selected, you're separated for a purpose. Now that's going to be really important because we see that work in Genesis isn't totally finished until we see it fulfilled once and for all in the person and work of Jesus Christ. We go to Matthew chapter 1, and Matthew chapter 1 starts off, if you were to go there and find it in a Bible, and you'd start off like, hey, New Testament, this should be interesting, let's read that. And you start reading that this is the genealogy of Jesus, the Messiah, the son of David, the son of Abraham. In Matthew chapter 1, it just starts and it just continues on. So-and-so is the father of so-and-so, the father of so-and-so, the father of so-and-so. And it just goes on and on for dozens and dozens of these different names. And you're like, this is really, really boring stuff that doesn't make any difference to my weaker life whatsoever, until you start to see how Matthew is making good on the purpose of Genesis, to saying, listen, all of that separating out didn't stop. It continued on and continued on until it gets to the pinnacle of the separating out. And we see that the point, the focal point of all of that is Jesus Christ, is that Joseph was the father of Jesus. That's the point. Jesus is the point. I love what the author of the book that I just referenced here shared with us, is that Jesus is the one to whom all God's separating was always meant to lead. He is the point, and then we join along with him. Acts chapter 4, verse 12, salvation is found in no one else, for there is no other name under heaven given to mankind by which we must be saved. The point of Genesis is that we are separation for a blessing, separated for a purpose, and that we're invited to join Jesus on that mission. All right, so here's some questions, some group questions for us that I'd love for you to respond to or to talk about. Maybe you're watching this with somebody or with a group of people. That would be fantastic as well. So among yourselves or on the feed broadcast here, some group questions. First of all, review in your own words, what is the point of the book of Genesis? And if you'd like to, you can just kind of pause it and talk to somebody about that. In your own words, what's the point of Genesis? Christians sometimes talk about being a blessing. What does that mean? In what ways has God equipped you to be a blessing to other people? How specifically has somebody been a blessing to you? How specifically have you been a blessing to somebody this past week, this month, or this season? Take a minute and talk about it. You can hit pause if you'd like to. You can share a comment in the section below, which would be great, about any of those group questions. What is the point of the book of Genesis? Another fun question might be, what would the Christian faith be missing if Genesis wasn't a part of it, besides just a great creation story? And then my encouragement to you as you look through Genesis in your own personal devotion, in your own personal study, is to begin to read every chapter of Genesis through the lens of separation, through the lens of how is God setting aside one thing or one people group or one person for a particular purpose. And here's a challenge action step for you. Somebody shared with me a while ago, and it just really stuck with me, is that we're blessed to be a blessing. We're supposed to bless other people. And so sometimes we think about it in terms of a cup, and we think about being blessed as like filling the cup. Right? And what can we do in order to be blessed? And sometimes we think about scripture reading and prayer, and sure, like these things bless us. But oftentimes we think about what different ways to fill our own cups. And so this is the encouragement action step for this coming week ahead, is this line: I'm not responsible for filling my own cup. I'm not responsible, for filling your cup. I'm responsible for emptying out mine. That's my responsibility. So I'm just looking for people to go around and to bless. Right now, there is someone who needs to hear directly from you. Who is it? And what are you going to do for them this week? All right, take it easy, everybody. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next week and every Wednesday at noon.